Keith Garner from Wesley Mission, welcoming you to another edition of Wesley Impact. In my thought for today, I'm going to be exploring an interesting encounter that Jesus had with a Samaritan woman. And we're going to take a look at how some of our own Aussie sporting legends team up with Wesley Mission to help the homeless. And we meet up with one of South Africa's cricket greats, Peter Pollock. In the 1960s, Peter was considered one of his country's best fast bowlers, and certainly one of the few Springboks who've captured over 100 Test wickets. Peter came to know Jesus Christ through a Christian TV programme, and I met up with Peter in our Wesley Mission head office during his speaking tour in Australia last year. Peter, it's great to have you on the show. When did the love of cricket first begin for you?
Well, as far back as I can remember, Graham and I, as little kids, I remember the early days to get my brother to play. He was the younger. I'd have to let him bat first. And, you know, he was good even in those days, you know, when you play in the back lawn and the dahlias or the fielders and the little bushes and things. And I'd battle to get him out, and then you'd get him out, and he wasn't keen to go out anyway, even though he was genuinely caught by a dahlia. So mother would come along and she would say, "Shame, you know, he's a little boy, he's your little brother, give him another chance." And she didn't realize how hard it was to get him out. So I suppose that he ultimately became the batsman. That's how I became the bowler.
You became a good bowler because
yeah.
of that. Yeah. In your latest book, Into the Light, you say you made deals with God, you know, even in cricket, you know, when you were thinking about your Christian journey,
Yes.
you look back and say, you know, maybe if you give me 3 or 4 wickets, you know, in this.
Yeah, no, you know, I never, because of the background, I mean, Presbyterian. Granddad was moderator of the Presbyterian Church, and for the first 15 years, we went to Sunday school, all those things. So I never, ever had a problem believing in God or Jesus. I never got challenged to get born again or have a relationship, but I always believed. And like that story, there I was, we needed to beat England. I'm fielding down a third man, and it's beyond us. And for a cricketer to admit that it's beyond, now it's time for God. And you know, it was desperate, and it was very real, because it did. I'm certain God doesn't have any interest in winning cricket matches and that, because I think you learn more when you lose, type thing. But I think the interesting thing for me was that God was there. I had this belief, and I even had expectations. I made a deal with him, and all that thing. That was part of the reason why I tell that story, because when I look at it in real terms, I think, you know, it's rather an embarrassing story.
Well, maybe it is embarrassing, but to some extent it's part of that.
It's the reality of it.
And getting to the real point of understanding perhaps who got it. Let's move on a little bit to your wife, Inez, and something of her story, because after what you call a considerable period of time, it's 16, 17 years of marriage, you say everything changed.
Yes, it did. It drastically, because, you know, when she came and she said that she was born again, I thought she was going through a midlife crisis. You know, she's over the age of 40, and you know how patronizing we can be. You know, great, go for it, I'm right behind you. I didn't tell her how far, but you know, you're right behind. But there was this change, and you know, I noticed it. I really didn't want to accept, because it just didn't fit in with my ex. But the kids noticed it. And as I say, when I speak, I think even the animals noticed the difference. And I said to her, you know, Lovey, what's happened to you? And she said, the Lord by his Spirit indwells me. And I mean, that's too complicated for a CEO to understand, but that was the reality. And it led the way. For the first, because I'd lived with this sort of Christianity, granddad, but here was a change. When Jesus Christ comes into a life, that life changes. If there's no change, there's no Jesus.
Just give me in a sentence before we just break what the most important and significant change was.
Well, it was for her. Well, you know, I think she was a nag. I know you don't have too many of those in Australia and around the world.
And it's not politically correct for me to acknowledge there is such a thing, you know.
But it was the change in her, and you know, I realised that with her and myself, it was something that came to me profoundly the night I gave my heart to Jesus, was that, all my life I'd known about God, but I now changed knowing about God to knowing God. And there's a massive difference between the two. Knowing about God isn't going to change your life at all.
Let me hold it there. Before we talk about that transition, and which is really from cricket to Christ, if you like, we're going to take a break now, and we're going to have our performer on the show this week, Steve McPherson, who regularly sings on the show. And I hope you enjoy Cornerstone.
My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. When darkness seems to hide His face, I rest on His unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. He is Lord, Lord of all. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all.
Keith Garner's new book, A Word for the World, is now available. Dealing with the 4 themes of success, sorrow, society and spirituality, the 16 sermons in this book will definitely inspire and challenge you as you read. The book also includes a DVD featuring interviews with Nick Farr-Jones, Lee Hatcher, Tanya Plibersek and Margaret Somerville. For more information on A Word for the World, please contact us on 9263 5555 or at impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
We're back with South African cricket legend, if you like, Peter Pollock, and it's good to continue our conversation. Peter, in 1966, you were named Cricketer of the Year. You obtained great status on a world stage of cricket. You're really very much at the height of your career then. How do you now, when you look back, take stock of that sporting career?
When I look at the sporting career, the cricket, the business, because the family, the 3 of us, Graham and Sean and myself, we're the only family where all 3 have actually been rated number 1 in the world at some stage in their particular careers. And when I look at cricket and I look at even the business world, and there were times when I perhaps looked at my life and I thought, hey, I've had a good life. If someone had said to me, if you had it all again, what would you change? I probably would have said nothing. And then I met Jesus. And that whole life paled into insignificance the day I met Jesus. And that was, it was a night and day. The pearl of great price.
But for you, if I might just enter to this area that is not something that we prepare for, I say to you, do you think that the cricket, though, has opened up doors for you that perhaps wouldn't have?
There's no question about that, the platform, and I would say that today. I would also say that from a humanistic point of view, I can never give back to cricket what it gave to me. And we came out of that sort of mold. You know, we didn't play for money. We used to have to take leave to go and play. And it was tough and we played hard, but it is different. It was different in those days too. We got genuine friendships across the teams. Australians and English players. I got very, very friendly with Ted Dexter. People like Bobby Simpson. Very good friends. Ian Redpath. All those guys have subsequently been very good friends.
Let me just move on to the difficult story of Hansi Cronje and some of that. A lot of people remember from the film that story, but he was somebody who was a friend of yours, and you tell us a little bit about that story.
Well, you know, the simple bottom line was he was regarded as a Christian. I travelled with him. And from time to time, he would mention the Lord in his... he didn't go overboard on the issue. And then when this thing happened, the interesting part was that his legal team and even cabinet ministers said to him, deny it and we'll clean it up. And he sought the advice of myself and Ray McCauley. And we said, you have no option. You have no option, you need to tell the truth. And he chose to go that way. After the King Commission, he came down to see my wife and I because I was like a father to him. And he was rationalizing things. And I said to him, you know, you must stop rationalizing. But what you did was incompatible with the Lordship of Jesus Christ. And you know, he really broke down and he wept because he felt that was the whole issue. And awesome, he'd been playing games with him. Because if Jesus Christ is truly Lord of your life, you don't take $80,000 from bookmakers. And there was an incredible change from that moment on. His last 21 months, it was from 21 months from there until he died in the plane crash. There is no question whatsoever. There was an absolutely new man, and I know that the prodigal son has gone home, and God is in the reconciliation business. You know, finally, whatever you've done, there's always the avenue of coming home.
And that which rolls off our shoulders, the burden taken away, would be part of that experience,
yes,
wouldn't
absolutely. It? And it was a great privilege just to watch it. I think that is, for me, in my 30-odd years of ministry, has been the greatest privilege is just to see what actually happens when someone's life is radically changed, when they really give up their independent right to themselves and allow Jesus Christ to be Lord of their life.
Peter, thank you very much for sharing with us. Before you began that last sentence, I was going to say, give us a sentence that describes your life as an evangelist, and really that's so critical. When Jesus comes into your life, everything is changed. Thank you for taking time out to speak with us here on Wesley Impact.
God bless you all. Thank you.
It's been 200 years since the first Methodists met in Australia. To celebrate 2 centuries of faith and pioneering care, CEO and presenter Reverend Dr. Keith Garner takes us back to where it all began.
But we don't begin here at the heart of London. We begin in a town in the north of England.
In this fascinating narrative, Reverend Garner chronicles the history of the life and times of the founder of Methodism, John Wesley. This fresh and thought-provoking documentary takes us on a journey throughout the United Kingdom, beginning in John Wesley's hometown of Epworth.
John Wesley was born here on the 17th of June, 1703.
This 1-hour DVD travels onto his education years and beginnings of social justice in Oxford, to his final years in London. For more information on John Wesley, the man and his mission, call 02 9263 5555 or email us at impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
17% of homeless people in Australia are under the age of 12. At Wesley Mission, our own research has found also a correlation between homelessness as a child and homelessness later in life, often affecting future generations. Let's take a look at how our Sports United campaign is helping to raise much needed funds to help Wesley Mission run programmes to break this dangerous cycle.
Look, today's obviously about raising some money. It's about raising awareness for our work in the homeless space, but it's also about kicking back, relaxing, meeting new friends, and hearing some really interesting stories.
I was divorced some years ago, and I found it very hard finding a house. I lived in a car for some couple of months, and it was quite brutal. I think loneliness is a big thing, the lack of warmth, the lack of knowing. You're very unsettled. Sometimes it's not just individuals, there's couples, there's entire families.
This place, for the last 20 years, here and another oval over near Marketown, has been my place to stay.
Wesley has been there for me for 20 years, 22 years. They're there for me 5 days a week. I have a shower 5 days a week if I feel like having a shower. If there's clothes there that I need.
Supporting homelessness is about finding a home. It's about giving them shelter. It's about giving them the connection back into society. People who are homeless are disconnected from the society. They don't know how to get the help or where to get the help when they've got a mountain of issues and personal stresses in their lives that they need to address and they can't address. Helping homelessness is about helping those people help themselves.
Well, I think everybody has a story, and I think that a lot of people just pass judgment when they see someone lying on the street or see someone that looks derelict and down and out. Then they blame them on the choices that they've made, as opposed to having some compassion and empathy towards them. And I think what the Wesley Mission does is express that compassion.
My drug addiction had led me into homelessness, and I started separating myself away from the family. I, just started having nowhere to go. So I was sleeping in a caravan and lived in a few different friends' places. When I was told that I was adopted, for example, when I was 8 years old, I went into my shell. I became very, more strong-willed, very independent always, and determined to prove my worth to the world, because from that moment on I felt that once I was told I was adopted, that I wasn't worthy of my own mother's love. I was given up. So why was I given up? And those questions weren't answered for many years. So in the meantime, dealing with that necessity to prove my worth to the world, to prove that I was worthy of love and attention and affection, is what drove me to become a world champion. It's also what drives people to drugs, alcohol, crime and desperation. So fortunately I was able to turn it into a positive, but there's plenty out there that aren't that lucky.
Now, one of the longest individual encounters that Jesus had with an individual recorded for us in the New Testament is in John 4. In this particular chapter, Jesus meets a Samaritan woman by a well. We read that quite clearly. It's spelt out for us now. He had to go through Samaria. He's on a journey, ordinary journey. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of the ground. It's at this place that he meets a Samaritan woman. Now, he tackles the prejudices of his own day. The very fact that it's a Samaritan woman. He's a Jew, she's a Samaritan. There are long-standing reasons why the two are separate as group. Some of it goes back to where they worship and things that they did. But he tackles the question of prejudice. And I think I'd want to say also here, he takes on the gender issue, because many men would not have spoken to a woman. But he made that journey in terms of being prepared to speak to her. And that says a great deal about the inclusivity of Jesus. He demonstrates grace and a non-judgmental attitude. That's certainly true, because later in the chapter, Jesus asks a question. Well, he gives an instruction: go call your husband and come back. She says, I've got no husband. And he says, right, you've got no husband, because in fact, you've got 5 husbands, and the one you're living with now is naturally a husband. But he doesn't judge her. He's quite clear about what's right and wrong throughout the Gospels. There's no doubt about that. But he doesn't judge this woman. There are many aspects to this story, and it's an incident that leads to witness. The woman abandons her water jar and invites her neighbours to hear Jesus. That comes at the end of another part of this long account in verses 28 through 29. And the truth is that the passage has much to teach us as Christians in relation to our witness to other people. And this is what I really want to share with you today. It gives us, I think, 3 helpful guidelines in terms of our witness. Firstly, we need to break the ice. Don't you find that so difficult, ice-breaking? I'm not a natural conversationalist. Because you're a public person, because you speak regularly, people think the opposite is true. Not so at all. If I'm on a train or I meet somebody, I find it just very difficult sometimes. But we've got to break the ice if we're going to communicate with others. And the Lord crosses the barriers and thaws the historic divisions. And this tells me that we have to take the initiative at times, especially where prejudice, hurt, and estrangement exist, such as they did here. They're great insights, I think. Secondly, we must find the real issues. Jesus wanted to talk to her about living water, and it would have been so easy to be sidetracked. In fact, 2 things could have happened. One, he could have been sidetracked by talking about all the things that might have arisen in that conversation, or he could have so jumped to the real issue without listening to the woman that there isn't a real relationship built. Jesus got both those things absolutely right. It's the real need of the woman at the well that becomes central to the way Jesus handles the situation and reaches out to her. And that to me tells me that not only we've got to break the ice, as it were, and cross the bridge, we've got to be prepared to meet people at their point of need. But thirdly, and this becomes very significant, the source of life is internal, not external. So the message of the Spirit of God becomes so very, very important in all living witness. You see, the witness led to others coming to hear what Jesus had to say. It wasn't just something that happened in that moment. When, in fact, the jars are put down, there's a sense in which this woman is going to others. Let me introduce you to somebody who told me everything there is to know about myself. And really, it's that kind of experience when blind people see, when deaf people hear, when people have had their children healed and brought to life. All those lead to other moments when people tell others. And clearly and surely that witness is so important. So we have to be prepared to cut the ice, as it were. We have to be prepared to meet people at their point of need. And we have to recognize that as we witness, it will not just be what happens in that moment, but the elongated sense in which that goes into the world. Well, we've heard some amazing stories of sports personalities. Peter's story is certainly worth listening to and powerful, how other people have heard the good news. May God bless you as you seek also to be a witness to Jesus Christ.
If you would like to know more about today's topic or for more on Keith's message, contact Keith by writing to Wesley Mission, Post Office Box A5555, Sydney South 1235, or email impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
I'm extremely grateful for you joining us. We leave you with a fitting song reflecting on Peter Pollock's journey. It's called Heaven Opened Up. Till next week, goodbye and God bless you.
Every breath, every thought, every long night till now, every word, every line, every ambition till now, all it up to you. All my prayers, all these songs, all the labor I've done, all the roads I've walked, of all the prizes I've won, none compare to you. Heaven heard this plea when I fell on broken knees. Heaven opened up and filled the holes in me, the holes I could not see. All this hope, all this joy, all this beauty I found takes the soul on a road I thought I'd never walk down, all because of you. All this love, all this truth, this gift to my soul filled up holes.